Hello, everyone. My name is Rafael, and I would like to welcome everyone to my Headshot Photography podcast. Today is an extremely special day for me. I'm honored to speak to one of my idols, amazing photographer out of New York, Mark Mann. You are like a hero when it comes to portrait photography. Your portfolio is just breathtaking, and as I mentioned, like I've been following you for many years. You've been my inspiration. I've been also trying to study your photos because they iconic. So yeah, thank you so much for accepting my invitation because this is like treat for me. So
Oh
thank you
wow, thanks for me
so
as
much.
well. Thank you.
Yes, so I would like to start with just kind of getting a little bit into your world, and then I was trying to dig some bio and some information about you. There's not much, or maybe I'm just not good at the kind of researching things. But would you mind and tell me a little bit about how did you get into photography? Like how this whole thing started? What was the process, and when did you decided to become
The
professional photographer?
photographer. I'm still deciding.
Still deciding.
I'm still deciding if that's what I want to do. I was I was a high school kid who loved art. Um, I was good at art, not amazing, but I found it I find doing art and being creative one of my best subjects. I also love creative writing, but I just was so not good at English that it prohibited it. Nowadays if you're really creative and you've got ideas, they kind of let you record them or type them or whatever. But at this point, in order to express anything, I had to write it, freehand, and I never had the patience or the time or the ability. So I found that art was a really good creative outlet. So when I was kind of working on what I wanted to do for my life, I really didn't see how art, apart from graphic design, I knew some graphic designers, how it was possibly going to be a career art. And then I, I was about 16, and I went on to, I had some friends coming up from Manchester, and I lived in Glasgow, and I was just doing a little quick jump across to Edinburgh to meet
Hmm.
some friends at the Edinburgh Festival. And I basically met a girl on a train, and she was, an older woman of at least 18, and I sat down opposite her and started talking. Very kind of forward move for a young man, but that was kind of in my personality. And she told me she was studying photography at Manchester School of Design. I
Hmm.
thought, well, that's what I'm going to do. So I had a great time at the festival. I came back to my high school and asked my high school teachers if we had photography or a darkroom or anything.
Hmm.
And he said, yeah, we do. And I was pretty close to my art teachers, and David Marshall, one of my teachers, took me into this dark room that they had set up, and we didn't have any negatives, but I put my glasses down and my keys and a couple of other things, and he exposed a piece of paper like Man Ray style on the enlarger, and we put it in the developer, and I just saw this image appearing, and I just thought it was so magical. I thought, actually, this is kind of a good idea. Went home, asked my dad if I could borrow his camera. I think he had like a Canon Sure Shot 100, uh, you know, compact camera, like a lot of people had. I
Hmm.
started to take photographs, black and white, and Mr. Marshall, art teacher, just showed me how to print them, and I started to build up a portfolio of kind of the art that I'd made. Um, I'd done a lot of sculpture and I photographed it and everything. And then I kind of, at the end of the year, applied to art school.
Hmm.
My parents were like, "What school?" I'm like, "Art school." All right. and I did a foundation course, which was like a general discipline course where you didn't really have to decide at the beginning what you wanted to, I suppose, major in. And then, I always kind of knew I wanted to major in photography. And then after that year or 9 months of that year, I applied to the photo school there and miraculously was accepted.
Hmm.
And the young lady that I'd met on the train was in third year when I was in first year, and we've been friends ever since.
Wow.
We don't see each other as often as we used to, but we're friends. And I started to study photography at Manchester, and that's genuinely the story of
Okay.
you know of how it started. But
Oh,
even you go to college for 4 years. Listen, as I say, I don't know really how it is now, but they teach you nothing about being a photographer. They teach you a little bit about art history and maybe how a camera works and how strobes work, but that's such a tiny, tiny part of the craft of being a photographer.
absolutely. So that leads me to the next question. Like, how did you like? Well, first of all, why did you decided to focus on photographing, people? So it was like a specific kind of decision throughout a process because photography is
Yeah,
a really big bag of different genres of photography. So why did you decided to work with people and photograph them?
um, I'm not, I can't talk about like a specific time that this happened,
Yeah.
but I wasn't great at photographing landscapes. I don't have a lot of patience within photography. So, I'd get somewhere and the light would be rubbish. And
Hmm.
maybe if I was doing like something in my course, the landscape people who were leaning to landscape was, well, let's wait a couple of hours and
Hmm.
see if the light changes. I'm like, nah, wait a couple of hours. I'm going to go photograph the guy in the cafe because he's around.
Hmm.
Um, and then I felt that, I think it initially started with, access. I had access to people. Um,
Hmm.
I had access to my family. I had access to all the crazy people on my course. I was living in a university town with 40,000 students. I just had access, and a lot of people wanted to have their picture taken, and that seemed to draw that into me, and I draw me into that. And I think, from like the very first time that I started to make portraits, I've been practicing the craft of making portraits, and
Hmm.
it evolves and it changes, and your aesthetic changes, and you know, eventually, I suppose after 30 odd years, you kind of get an idea of what you're doing and how to do it. But it's still it's still a mystery because every face is different. Listen, I'm sure it's the same for still life folk who are photographing things, and every shot is different. But for me, every face, man, every face deserves a special treatment. Every personality needs a different encouragement to show, and it's just a constant learning curve. And I
Hmm.
think that's why I enjoy it the most.
Absolutely. So how your style changed over the years? Like, because I know, as you said, your aesthetics changes over the time, and you just kind of developing your style over many, many years, endless photo shoots, working with different people. So you see like
Yeah,
a huge difference when you started and not and what you're doing right now.
yeah, and a lot of that comes from uh, situation. So when I first started, I suppose the first thing I really kind of started when I moved to New York 27 years ago, I would say is like some kind of career started to happen, and I started off shooting a lot of music. And what was really hot right now was kind of the birth of hip hop, or not the birth because hip hop was a decade old, but the rise of hip hop. And I started to shoot a lot of hip hop. I can tell you how I think that happened, but I had no particular love for the culture of music. I grew to love it and understand it, but I knew nothing about it, which was an advantage in a lot of ways. But you there was a lot of I think it was kind of a little bit like shooting rock and roll in the early days. It was a lot of unpredictable situations with talent, um, and you had to work fast to make
Mhm.
stuff happen. And back then I was shooting like an RZ 67 with manual focus. I don't really think there was much autofocus for medium format cameras at that time. The RZ was a workhorse. I
Mhm.
actually have one. So this is camera we were shooting,
Wow.
which is I don't know, like 12 pounds or 10 pounds. It's a tank, and you have 10 frames on that magazine. And uh, I think because there was so much energy in the studios and so much energy, there was a lot of movement, there was a lot of dance, there was a lot of crazy.
Mhm.
You needed a lot of light because you didn't want to shoot anything narrow focus, because if you did, you weren't going to get anything sharp. So you would start out like, can I shoot f/22? Yeah, you can, but you're going to need a ton of light.
Mhm.
So everything was a ton of light
Yes.
because you've got 10 shots and you're trying to get something in focus while somebody was moving. So it was really good training for working fast, working, thinking on your feet,
Mhm.
and just making sure you tried to get a shot. And so that was a whole ton of light.
Mhm.
Um, when when I when I stopped really shooting music so much, it's all these things that happen in synergy. By that point, I was shooting a little Contact 645 medium format,
Mhm.
and basically the company Contacts was going out of business,
Mhm.
and I had two or three bodies and a set of glass, and every time I would like I would have a body in repair somewhere. You know,
Mhm.
eventually it was in Japan. The lenses start. So I was like, oh, I need a new camera, man. I don't, I can't work like this anymore. I don't know what, my camera's not working and whatever. So Leica had just brought out a medium format camera called the S, and when they brought out the S2, they brought out an adapter ring for contacts glass.
Mhm.
So I was like, oh, wait a minute. I can see what you're saying. I can keep all my glass. I
Mhm.
only need a new body, which sounded pretty appealing to me. There was some sensor size differences, but it wasn't like this crazy shift of a whole new system.
Mhm.
Um, and I did that, and I just happened to meet some people at Leica at the time when I bought it, which was wonderful. And all of a sudden, somebody lends me a Leica lens, like a 120 millimeter portrait lens, and I just to shoot a little bit with it. I said, yeah, this is fine. It's great. F/22, great. Like, what F/22? You're supposed to shoot that wide open. I'm like, huh? So like open it up wide. What does this do? Like can't, using strobe, can't get the light down low enough, massive strobes. Like, whoa, how did I do it? Oh, have you thought about trying like LED lights or
Mhm.
hot lights so you can, lower your light? Oh, that's the thing. And at the same kind of time, the type of people I was shooting was different, and the studio became quieter.
Mhm.
Um, energy wise and me wise, I think. And all of a sudden, I'm shooting like f2 with very little light and people that were more still. Um, and then that was just like a explosion. That I
Mhm.
built a lot of career on these crazy high energy pictures, and all
Mhm.
of a sudden that wasn't working for me anymore. And wow, um, and that is kind of like that was like a first major shift to, oh, I shoot on everything wide open, and
Mhm.
I don't need these crazy strobes. And then I got involved with a company out of the UK called Rotalight, who make LED lights that are just amazing.
Mhm.
And I got involved with Leica, And that's kind of how it's been for the last while. But it's also like I can be brutally honest. About I don't know, a while ago, um, I moved into a new studio space with some friends. They were a small ad agency. We worked together a lot. It was great to move in with them. It was beautiful space in Chinatown. It was very beautifully lit. The only problem was a 5 floor walk up. There was no elevator.
Mm-hmm.
So I very quickly started to think about, hmm, how can I work without carrying gear? I'm going on location. My sister and anybody who was with me was like, well, what do we have to take? I'm like, much, not much.
Yeah.
So, that kind of evolved into doing a lot of these ring light portraits because this ring light was like, you threw it over your shoulder and you could do this ring light portrait. You could do it anywhere, and
Yes.
it was literally carrying a small camera bag. So for a long time, my work was very pared down to the ring light and the camera. Then moved to somewhere with these people that had an elevator, and all
Yeah.
of a sudden we started to take more gear out on location. So it's like needs must a lot. But the reality is, I think with higher ISOs, as
Mm-hmm.
long as we're not using the higher ISOs, um, and with more better sensors, I think the
But
equipment's
do you
shrunken.
shoot that digitally these days, or you're still experimenting with film? Like, how does?
Yeah, I mean, I shoot digitally, mostly commercial, because that is what is asked for.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I have an old Graflex 4x5, 5x4. I don't know which way it is anymore. Which I love to shoot, but I used to shoot a lot of the Fuji or the Polaroid Instant on it. She got
Okay.
this gorgeous 4x5 instant picture,
Mm-hmm.
beautiful colors. It was delightful, but kind of everyone stopped making that film.
Mm-hmm.
So it's tough now. You actually shoot some film with it. So I still shoot film with it, but the RZ is coming a little bit back more into play. I really enjoy shooting with that.
Well, it's
It's
a
a
real
yeah, it's a lesson on how to how to like slow down, compose your pictures, focus your picture. It's a lesson because you just don't have never-ending shooting ability.
camera.
So it keeps you grounded. I
Yeah.
mean, shooting some film definitely keeps you grounded.
Yeah. I
Especially
think.
like, I'm not shooting film for art. I'm
Mhm.
trying to shoot film to make I see a lot of people that are doing amazing things with film, but I get the feeling, and maybe I'm wrong, that the more of a disaster the
Mhm.
shot is, or the lighting is, or the processing is, or the printing is, the happy they are with the art.
Mhm.
I'm not trying to do that. I've never been great at that.
Mhm.
So if I excuse my language, if I mess up my lighting, I'm pissed. I'm not like, oh, look at that fabulous flare. It's like, nah, it's not what I wanted.
Mhm.
So it's trying to shoot film in the way that I would need as a professional today. I'm
Mhm.
not. I'm not. Oh, that's a happy mistake, guy.
Yeah.
And
So let's talk
if I
about your
tell you,
creative process.
sorry, sir.
Let's talk a little bit about your creative process because
Ooh,
at
right.
your portfolio, like you work with really high profile people. So my question to you is like when you're getting into this type of sessions, like do you have image in your mind you want to create, or you just coming like open page and see what happens, how I'm going to deal with these people, how the dynamics going to work, and then you're going to try to create during the process, or like how this whole, because that's what I'm kind of very curious,
I,
like
I,
how does it
I,
look on your end.
yeah, I think creative process is something that I thankfully have never really thought about until the last, half decade. And the
No.
only reason I've thought about it is because people have asked.
Hmm.
And then, you know, when you start to try and work out what your creative process is, you're like, "Oh, is that my creative process? I don't want to do that." So I think the weird thing about creative process is when I really think about it,
Hmm.
it kind of messes me up because
Okay.
no, no, I'd certainly answer, but the way I see it is like, if you've been doing something for a while, I mean, I would say like, a couple of years, it's like, how'd you get dressed? If you ask me if I put my right sock on first or my left sock on first, I can't really tell you until I think about it.
Yes.
And the next morning I go to put my right, is that the one I put on? So I find my creative process is very like that. I'm really trying not to focus on. What I can tell you is I'm still incredibly nervous before every shoot.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm not nervous, there's something wrong. I know that whatever can go wrong will go wrong. I'm trying to be prepared for all these situations. I certainly can tell you that there's uh, a fair amount of time, worrying about what can go wrong, like crazy, like, oh, do I have another camera? If this one breaks, your camera's never broken in 10 years, but I'm still worried that I don't have a backup camera. I have great anxiety dreams about my camera turning into jelly when
Oh
I'm
wow.
like,
Okay.
not like, sitting in front of a president and my camera is jelly. I mean, I have a lot of anxiety dreams.
Wow.
My mom describes it best as that, it's like a duck or a swan. You give out the impression that you're floating across the top of this lake and it's seamless, but
Mm-hmm.
underneath your little legs are like this. And I feel like that an awful lot. I feel like I'm panicking like under, but with practice and with, never ending practice, you kind
Mm-hmm.
of disguise that and give off this. I feel it's very important to give off a feel of like I'm kind of confident in what I'm doing. Um, no, look, some of it is definitely experience. There's definitely experience there that it's kind of hard to throw me in a situation where some new disaster happens.
Mm-hmm.
Any
Did you
disaster
have
that may
some
have.
kind of like a crazy story which could share, like, you run into some really difficulties, or like everything was pretty smooth over the years?
Oh my God, no!
Oh,
Anything that can go
okay.
wrong has gone wrong. I've been on set twice where once I dropped my camera off the edge of the set table. I went to put it down and my camera flipped over and the lens banged into it and I
That's
didn't
it.
have my medium format camera. It was a disaster. High profile. I was once on set where my photo assistant I handed him my camera to change a lens and he fumbled. And, I've been on set where I've taken 130 pictures or 100 and something 130 pictures. And I realized that my tether to my computer is not working and these 30 pictures haven't come in.
Wow.
I've been on situations where, I've got there and my camera batteries aren't charged. I mean, every disaster that you can think about,
Holy,
I
that's
mean,
how you
we've
learn,
been,
I guess, right? Like the
yeah,
next
so
time you're like overprotective and you just like double check everything twice.
double, triple check, but there's also this kind of security in knowing, listen, I have a spare camera. How many
Right.
cameras can I bring? If two cameras go down, what am I going to tell you? It's like, so there's also that security. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely times that bad things happen, the other bad thing that can happen is, and this is probably the weirdest one and the hardest one to fix, is you kind of think you have an idea of what you want to do.
Mhm.
You're working with, say, I don't know, a certain personality. You've done a little research. You've gone a little deeper into who they are than just they were in this show, this show, this show. You thought, okay, so the client's asking for this, and I've got to produce this. Let's do this light with this option with this camera. And then you get there, and everything seems to be fine. The light's fine, camera's fine, everything's right. You take your first picture, and it just doesn't look good.
Mhm.
And then you're at this place where everything should look good and it doesn't. And at that point, you got to make some serious
Adjust.
adjustments. What have I done? Is it the light that's not working? Is it my angle that's not working? that to me is a much harder to fix than
Yeah.
I don't have my camera. I don't have the the lens that I wanted or something.
So
That's
how typically you react to this? Are you trying to fix stuff, or you just like hoping, okay, maybe this is gonna work?
no, I don't. I sorry, my router just fell off the shelf because I kicked it.
Oh,
Um, no, I'm very very fast in making
mhm,
changes. I think the English the expression is flogging a dead horse. It's like,
mhm,
yeah, I could take 100 pictures here, and I'm not going to be happy with any of them.
mhm.
So it's like, all right, and and look, what I would say to all photographers or anyone in life to a certain extent is if you show any fear
Yes.
or any distaste in your face and you're working with another human being, that human being is going to think it's them that's the problem. It doesn't matter if they look, you could be photographing a well, maybe not supermodel, but you could be photographing a very confident person and you take a picture and you go, hmm, they're going to think it's them, right? I mean, you can't, so you just like, oh shit, it's my light. But you got to say, wow, you look fantastic. You look amazing, but kind of messed up my light. Let me try and make my light better because I
Mhm,
think so it's, I think, always taking responsibility for stuff. Honesty and integrity without panic is a good way. So,
mhm,
wow, that light, I'm kind of like where this is going, but I'd like to make my light better. Or you know
mhm,
what? I think it'd be better if you stood up, but listen, I'm not a great liar.
mhm.
I don't lie well, but I can do integrity. Trust me, I'm being honest.
Yes.
So, and that is experience and practice. That's not natural for me. That's just practice. So it's
It's
like,
a great
hey,
advice. Absolutely. So I'm sure you're getting asked about this like from everybody, but I would like to kind of talk a little bit about doing a session for presidents, because that's, we're talking about really, really high profile people. And if you could just give a little bit, or maybe glimpse how this whole thing even look like, because I'm guessing there is security, there is all this stuff, like how this kind of preparation for shoot like this even look like, because I know, as you said, it's nerve wracking. I'm guessing, you don't have like 2 hours to work with them. It's just in and out, I'm guessing.
maybe 7 minutes, 15 minutes. But yeah, so when for Obama, it was, I mean, let's talk about the biggest honor of your life as an immigrant to the UK, to the US, to be invited to shoot a sitting president in the White House. I mean, it's just, I can't. It's just, I can't even. I don't actually even believe it's real. Oh, there we go.
Yes,
There's
I'm
Barack.
prepared.
So we are told that we need to be at the White House at 8 a.m. and we need to go to a certain gate. And we had come down to Washington the night before, and I had requested if we could possibly have. There was 4 people allowed in the White House with our team. I had requested 2 photo assistants and a creative director, and there was some pushback, and I was allowed 1 photo assistant, the editor of the piece, and the creative director. So I'm also a little bit worried. This is back in the time where I was using a little more light as well, as you can see. Now I would approach it differently. But I was very, very anxious about, getting set up. We were going to have about 45 minutes to set up and 15 minutes to shoot. That's
Mhm,
what we had been told. So 7:30, we're rolling out our hotel, and we get a call from the White House that president's running late. The Greek economy has just crashed, and
mhm,
he's trying to meet with the Greek prime minister or something. Could be come at 10, and you have half an hour to set up and 10 minutes to shoot. Okay.
mhm,
So we get there at 10, and yeah, there's a lot of security to get into the White House.
mhm. I'm
So
guessing.
it's like going through the airport, but with people that have the utmost respect. I mean, as far as when I kind of asked them, I said their attitude was, you've been invited to visit with the president. That's an honor, and we serve the president, and it's, you guys, we're not trying to, we're just trying to make this experience as easy as possible for you. So dogs went over my equipment. Every piece was handled by secrets. I'm not sure if they were Secret Service, but there were certainly people that handled, very politely. Like, I have one lens that had a sticky lens cap, and he, very polite, made me take the lens cap off, and whatever. And then we get into the White House, and this room that you can see there is called the diplomatic room, and
Mhm.
it's right in the middle of the White House. So you can either enter it from the front door through the pillars, or from the back door, which leads out onto the lawn, where the helicopter lands. So we're taken in there, and we're handed, like, you can see, like 100 little carpet squares there,
Mhm.
and basically Secret Service. Well, first thing that happens is my photo director take it's also August. The White House is a very old house, and the air conditioning was not cranking.
Mhm.
So we're sweating crazy because it's like 100 degrees outside. And my the creative director, David Cucurito, takes off his jacket and throws it over that yellow couch that you can see there. And the Secret Service guy just goes, "Sir, the last person to sit on that was probably President Lincoln. Could you please remove your jacket?"
Wow.
Whoa. All right.
Excuse
So
me.
so I'm running around setting up. I'm trying to, I split it between my assistant and me, and my assistant's more of a digital tech. So I'm running around putting the lights up, and he's doing the cart and getting the cart set up. And this is a really, like, kind of cheeky Secret Service guy. And he comes up to me and he goes, "Are you the photographer?" I said, "Yes, sir, Mark, the photographer. Nice to meet you." He goes, "Okay. Just checking who you are." Well, okay. And I get on and literally running around and lights, and he comes up again. He goes, "I don't think you're the photographer." I go, "Why? Why? I'm Mark." And I ask guy, he goes, because we had a photographer here a couple of weeks ago, and all she did was stand and shout at like three people to move stuff around. Have you heard of her? Annie, somebody? Annie? Like, and I realized he was totally messing with me, and just be really funny. And it was a really nice break of comedy. And he was
Mhm.
really cool. He said, "Can I help you with anything? I know you don't have a lot of time." So
Yeah.
we get all set up, and we're told the president's coming in 10 minutes, and we're like, all right. And then we get president's running late. You guys have an hour.
Okay.
So it just, like, swinging around in this room for an hour, and my only vice left is my vape pen. So I'm going into the little bathroom off the China room, and I'm vaping, and the windows open. So we get back into the room, and the room kind of fills up. There'd been some Secret Service, but the press secretary comes in, the White House photographer comes in, and like some, like, people come in, and we're like, all right, things are happening. And I'm standing chatting to the Secret Service guy, and I can hear through his radio, "POTUS leaving West Wing." Like, oh my God, president's actually walking from the West Wing to us. Um, and I'm expecting somebody to go, "Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States of America, President Barack Obama." But it's his house, so he just walks in, right? He's like, "All right, what's happening in here?" And my director of photography was gobsmacked. Gobsmacked. The editor that I was working with is gobsmacked. I think, wait, is this up to me? Is it me? So I kind of walk over and go, "Hi, Mr. President. Nice to meet you. My name is Mark. We're the Esquire team. Could you have a seat over there, sir?" And he goes to sit down, and he sits down. And I start taking pictures. And
Mhm.
he's just looking at me, and I'm taking pictures. I'm like, well, I haven't introduced myself. There's been no hello, So I kind of put my camera down to my side and I walk towards him. And as I'm walking towards him, there's like two Secret Service guys kind of come out to meet me to like, why are you walking towards the president? And I get close to say, this is super weird, but I'm Mark. I'm an immigrant to this country. It's an honor to come to your house and meet you. I'm a blethering idiot, so I'm going to go back there and take photos, but I just wanted to introduce myself. And then I said, how's your day, sir? Are you busy? And he cracked up with laughter. He said, go take your photos. And, we had this, I would say for maybe a minute and a half, maybe 2 minutes, we had something.
Mhm.
And I could see that, I think Steve Jobs and Bill Gates were waiting for a meeting. I can't remember who it was, but his next meeting was running very late because of us. And that was like the tech giants. I think it was Bezos, Gates, and um, uh, uh, what's his name? Apple. Anyway, Tim Apple, not
Yeah.
Tim Apple, but Steve Jobs.
Sure.
Um, so I lose it. I know I've lost him. I've got 40,
Mhm.
45 odd frames. And somebody shouts, you got it? And I went like, yeah, I got it. And he goes, wow, that's great. Come on, let's all take a photo with me. And he
Mhm.
spent a couple of minutes talking with us. And then he left. And it was like all the air and light and everything just left the room with him. And you're
Mhm.
just left feeling like it was a bizarre feeling,
No.
totally bizarre.
Yeah.
And when I think about it now, it's like I just actually can't believe that it actually happened. I got sometimes if I'm really super nervous about something, I kind of have this out of body experience. It's really strange where I kind of like there's this guy taking photos called Mark Mann, and I'm
Mhm.
floating above watching him. It's
Okay.
really bizarre.
Yeah.
So
Because that's why I was kind of curious, how that works, because it's not like, I think it's a different story where you're meeting someone like that, right? Because, there is some kind of like common interaction where you introduce yourself, they introduce, but now you have to work with this person, right? You have to direct them, you have to tell them what to do, or you sit there, I don't know, turn this way, whatever. So it's completely different dynamics, right? So that's why, I think I would feel exactly the same. It would be like an out of body experience because
yeah.
you
I
know
mean, you're certainly right, and like with a lot of people, like as they, like people, everybody says, "How do I look?" I go, "I'm not telling you how you look. You're the president. You look great." you know, and I think with most people I've photographed, I think they appreciate that respect. I mean, at some point, I may say, "Sir, could you move, or ma'am, could you move your head to the left or to the right a little bit, and let's see that, let's see that smile, or let's see this, or whatever." So there, I do certainly do some direction, but that's another thing that I really
Mhm.
try not to over direct because you don't really want them thinking about this. How's that? It's like, man, just be you. We'll
Yes.
capture a moment of you. And I think that comes from not directing and uh I think, letting people be themselves and giving them that minute not to be themselves and to see you as, listen, not a friend, but somebody like, hey, we're just trying to get this done so you
Mhm.
can get back to your meeting and I can go home.
Yeah.
And I think people appreciate that. And it's really, it's really hard to, but you just have to kind of find your level with everyone. And I
Mhm.
think a lot of finding your level with everyone comes from the bottom line is we're all human beings, right? And trying to find commonality with other human beings is so much where you know photography, portrait photography is, but not to get too crazy, but it's just where what it is in life. It's like find a commonality with a person. If you have to have an interaction with anyone, make it a good interaction, or make
Absolutely.
it as pleasant as it can. Listen, I'm not perfect. I mean, there's
Mhm.
many days where people close to me probably have tried to kill me, but my I would like to think that my ethos is if you can have an interaction, make it pleasant, even if it's an unpleasant thing you got to talk about. I listen to people like screaming at people in stores, and I'm just looking at the person who's getting screamed at, going, I don't care.
Hmm.
I don't care. I'm not budging. I don't care. I've got screamed at by better than you. But if yours approach is more like, hey, listen, I know that you didn't do this, but it's a problem that I have. Can we work it? I just think that's a much better way of trying to get through things, and all these interactions that happen in everyday life, I think you can apply to portrait photography.
Absolutely. So, was your experience working with Bill Clinton was similar or was completely different?
Uh,
That's
Bill wasn't in the White House. Bill is Bill has a memory that is, I don't know if it's photographic. I don't know if it's an elephant. I don't know what it is, but
Mhm,
Bill Clinton has the most incredible recollection for anything that has ever happened.
mhm,
Um, Now I met him once before. A long story I'm not going to go into, but I met him once before at a dinner.
okay.
And ironically, um, uh, I all right, I've got to give you a little context. So at that time I was married to somebody,
Mhm,
and he knew my father-in-law, and that's how I met him and whatever through there. And then when I went to photograph him, it was maybe 8, 9 years later, and I was remarried to somebody else who had ironically worked with him. He was my father-in-law was the ambassador to Ukraine. He was special counsel uh, to Cyprus, and he'd worked for the president. So I meet him, and I say, "Hey, I've actually met you before with so and so," and he goes, "Oh yeah, I remember that." I said, "But I'm not with that person anymore. I'm not married to that person anymore." He looks at me. I said, "I'm actually married to so and so, who's uh, Alfred Moses's stepdaughter," and he goes, "Oh, so you're Fern's daughter's husband." Like, wow, you remember my mother-in-law's name, who'd also met him once? I mean, obviously he was going to know who my father-in-law was because he
mhm,
was his ambassador to Romania, but oh, you're Fern's daughter. Oh yeah, Fern and Alfred came up to see oh, how is Al? And and I'm just like, wow, you have a just
amazing.
amazing memory. He surrounds himself by very young, or at that time it was kind of young, very well dressed, beautiful interns, whether male or female, but they were all just impeccable.
Mhm,
And he was a character. He told stories. He was engaged. But once again, it's like when you meet somebody and they almost have like this incredible searchlight or lighthouse on their head, and when it shines on you, you're elevated and feel $1 billion. I've met a few people like this.
mhm,
uh, Mr. Clinton was certainly one of them, and then when it turns away, you just feel deflated. They have
cool.
such a big aura and personality.
Mhm,
um, and that was a much less fraught situation. We were in his offices,
mhm,
um, and it wasn't fraught, and it was kind of cool. And I know I said something funny to for him to give me that smile, um, and and that's also for me when I look at a portrait and I go, well, what did I contribute here? Apart from
mhm,
just clicking the shutter, what did I contribute to make that happen, to get that connection? And a portrait's a fail for me if I say I didn't do anything. Like anybody could have taken that picture,
yeah.
but I feel that if you said something or caused a reaction or had like this something going on between you and the sitter, then at that point, a snapshot or a picture becomes a portrait,
Mhm.
um, and that's super important.
Yeah. So would you be okay if we could go through some few other shots? Like I dive into your Instagram And honestly, I have a hard time to pick one because I would just go through all of them. But I was some of the ones which are, kind of very inspirational for me. And I would like to kind of, if you could just give me a little bit or kind of like a backstory how those images comes to existence.
God. I mean, this is it. The bottom line is that you go to you meet these people, you have an interaction. Sometimes it's an hour, sometimes it's 5 minutes, but you get paid for the picture. You hope you make a good picture. You hope everything's all right. But what you really have, and what I think is life changing for the photographer, is the experience of getting to be with that person. And obviously, as a portrait photographer, I'm incredible. Oh my God, I'm so fortunate to have had a little minute with so many high profile people. But I'm going to stress at this point that it doesn't look. I suppose I got some notice and became known as a photographer because of the profile of the people I've shot, but I'm just as happy shooting anyone. If there's a
Hmm.
face in front of me, that makes me happy. But Robin Williams, I mean, if you ask me like which of my heroes I photographed, Robin Williams is definitely one of my absolute heroes. I mean, I grew up watching Mark and Mindy in the 70s and 80s in Scotland, and just this character was just mind blowing. Everything about him. So, you know, getting to meet with him was amazing. He was shooting something in LA, and we go to LA to make this portrait, and you know, dealing with the publicists and the people, and well, what kind of space you need. We don't need much. It's just a ring light portrait. We can do it pretty much anywhere. We just, would prefer somewhere that's not direct sunlight. It's inside. They say, well, can we give you a little corner of one of our hangars? I'm like, sure. So we get there and we're a couple of hours early, and they take us into like hangar B or whatever it's called. And it's this massive, massive, like airplane size hangar. I'm like, oh wow. So we'd like set up in the corner, on the back corner, because the doors are open and the sunlight's coming in, California sky, California blue, really
Hmm.
picturesque. And we set up way back in the side with the least light. Um, and I'm all set up, and we're just waiting, as usual. And I think we get a text, or somebody texts us, says, "Okay, Mr. Williams is on his way." And I look at the door, and I wish I'd had some kind of video camera, because this is just man walking in, like casting this long shadow towards us because the sun's coming down, and it was just, oh my God, that's Robin Williams. Robin Williams is coming over here. It's
Hmm.
coming over here. And my mind is just again just like blown. So he eventually gets over, walks over to us, and he goes, "Hello." I said, "Hello, Mr. Williams. I'm Mark Mann. We're going to take this picture. It's going to be." He goes, "Wait, are you Scottish?" I'm like, "Yes, sir." And he immediately goes into Mrs. Doubtfire, but the most vulgar Mrs. Doubtfire you could ever imagine.
Oh wow.
And at this point, I'm in uncontrollable laughter. I'm in Mrs. Doubtfire just cursing, and I'm just dying. And he goes, "Oh, I know another one, Mel Gibson." And he does Mel Gibson doing his Scottish accent in Braveheart, and he
Hmm.
is so on it. I just can't stop laughing. It's just, oh my God, I can't believe I'm having this experience. So eventually he sits down and we talk, and my cameras this is a weird rig for me, because the camera was actually on a tripod because I wanted it level with their eyes, and I was trying to make, like if you look at the Clinton picture and this picture was the same series. So I don't actually really have to be looking through the camera, holding the camera, and we're just chatting.
Hmm.
And I'm just talking to Robin Williams, pressing the shutter every so often. And because it's a fixed light, there's not a lot of shutter sound. There's no strobe. So I'm not sure if he's aware or not, but we just chatted for 5 or 6 minutes, and I took a dozen, 15 photographs, and I said, thank you, sir. I got it, the best." And he walked out the same way he came in. It's just,
That's fantastic. And
but
I think that's what
I tell
yeah,
these
sorry.
stories, and it's like I can't actually believe that I did that. It's like it's bizarre to me. It's like it's just so beyond. It, it, it's hard for me to actually realize that I've done that. And
Hmm.
you know, I'm a struggling photographer. I know that may sound stupid, but I think all photographers are trying to evolve, and especially like old guys like me are trying to get their head around the new ways. And I don't think I've ever had a moment in my life that I don't feel like I'm a struggling photographer.
Hmm.
And it's weird for me to go back and tell these stories because I feel very inflated, and then I'll come off and I'll finish this podcast. It's like, oh Christ, what do I have to do now? You know, So it's
Yeah,
almost feels like I'm talking about someone else. It's bizarre.
absolutely. Yeah, but I think you cannot really put price on those type of experiences, right? It's something that
No, no.
it's just for you, and it's something that nobody's going to take this away from you. Doesn't matter, like you have tons of
Yeah,
money, you have no money. This is something that it's you're going to cherish the rest of your life, and I think that's what
May-
is amazing about.
maybe dementia.
Yes, maybe. Yeah, that's the one thing. Yeah. But also what I would like to add to this is, and then you point this out at the beginning about the landscape and other type of photography. But like if you really like we don't need much, right? As a portrait photographers, like you need little corner of something. You can have this character and
Need a
it
face.
just
Need
you
a
can
face
start
and
the
some
cameras
light.
rolling and it's the show is basically happening at the front of you, right? So
Yeah, and it's like I get a lot of young photographers, people. What lens you use, what camera do you use, and I. The answer sounds so pathetic when I say it doesn't matter. Worry about the image you're making, worry about your interaction with the
mhm.
person you're working with. Um, and it just sounds like shit advice because we're so conditioned, me too, to be thinking about, is this the right lens? Is this the right camera? Is this the right light? And all these things are majorly important, but you can practice all these things, practice at home. Get your mom to sit for a portrait, do 20 different lightings, see what these things are all like practicable. But where you don't want to be thinking about that stuff is when you're sitting opposite somebody, you just want an experience. And you don't want
Yes,
it because you taking from them, you want to be giving. And the more you give, the more you'll get back, I find.
yes.
And so, listen, so, I often don't work with lighting setups that are incredibly, I have friends that do beauty, and, I've been on set and I've, assisted enough beauty photographers back in the day that they've got an eye light. And if that model moves quarter of an inch or half an inch the other way, the eye light doesn't
Mhm.
work. Don't do that when you're trying to photograph somebody, because you might get some technically perfect image, um, but you're not going to get any personality. You're not going to get anything really going on. So, make your light a little wider, give your subject some space to move around in it. I think
Mhm.
is really, really important.
Absolutely. So we actually just getting closer to an hour, but
Oh,
I'd like to touch still a couple of images, if you okay. I'll
sure.
talk a little bit about this shot. He's one of my biggest heroes. And I'm gonna say honestly, I'm jealous you just have a chance to meet with him because I religiously listen to this guy. And I
Mhm.
think he was one of those people who like is a treasure. So if you could tell me a little bit
Carlin
about
was,
this shot.
yeah, Carlin was one of the first. I'd say legends or icons I photographed outside of music. And if you look at the picture, it's the way I can see that it's an old picture is
Mhm.
first of all it's shot on film. Second
Okay.
of all, you can see it's like F-22. I mean,
Mhm.
sharp from
Perfect.
front to back to middle to out to
Mhm.
everywhere. Um, Third of all, I'm using like a style of light that I used on kind of hip hop back in the
Yeah.
day where I've got this two side lights and I just look at it and go, "Oh my god, I'd love to go back and do that again." But I I'd like to say I had much more input into this photograph, but Carlin was just such a master.
Mhm.
And I'd brought some props. I brought some chattering teeth. I think I brought a rubber chicken, and bought a deck of cards. And as we were talking, he just takes the Joker, slips it in there, and goes like whatever he did like this. So, and that was that photo.
Uh,
So I'd like to say I had a lot more. He did, you know, I think our conversation we did have a little more interaction, but um, I didn't make I I can't say that that was a true Mark Mann exceptional experience. I mean,
mhm.
first of all, we shot in Las Vegas in some suites, not
Yeah.
suite, ballroom, and I think that the jokers at check-in had given us a room like the furthest away from this room that they
Mhm.
kept, it was like a mile walk with like one of these carts
Mhm.
with all our EQ on it. And it was just by the time I got in the ballroom, I was like, I need a break. A
Yes.
massive ballroom, they couldn't turn off the overhead lights, I had nothing to flag it with. It was just like it was a disaster. But but you do what you got to do. Like now, when I go to Las Vegas, I know that I've got it. Like if I'm going to be shooting in one of these ballrooms and I want to control the light, I know I need to flag the top off because these chandeliers and lights, so they can't shut them off. So
Yeah.
I got to flag it. But you know, I was young,
Yeah.
foolish.
Quite often, the beauty is born in disaster, right? That's the way I see it. Sometimes we have those situations
Yeah,
just like
it
out of
is
control.
innovation. It's just innovation. It's just
Yeah.
like, I mean, listen, now I would have the experience to know to do that. At that time, I didn't.
Mhm.
And however hard I tried, there was like hair light because I
Mhm.
couldn't flag it. So I thought, well, let's just put some light around the side of his face and fill it from the front. I think there's only one light on that. If I look at his eyes, there's only one light. Now I would definitely have another little full light. Like, look,
Yeah.
but
Well,
there's not a photo that I've ever taken that I don't look back at and go, "Ooh, we should have done that differently."
yeah, absolutely. But you know what? I think also we look at photos differently too, right? Because we're looking at the technical side and then we try to analyze what can be done better.
Mhm.
But I think whoever is looking at the photo, nobody kind of pay attention to those things, right? It's
Yeah,
just
but
something
we do, right?
we do, yeah. Yeah. And I know sometimes it's heartbreaking because you just like look at
It's
the
soul
image like,
destroying.
ah,
And
you know, I,
it's the most soul destroying when you don't like it or you're not happy with it and everybody else loves it. You're like,
yeah,
no, 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 no. But your kind of photo businessman face is like, I am so glad you like this, and I
yes,
love it. It's fantastic. Let's do it again.
absolutely. Okay, so let's jump to maybe one more.
Oh my God, Anthony Bourdain. I had the absolute privilege of photographing Mr. Bourdain about 3 or 4 times. This was the last time I photographed him, and this must have been maybe 6 months before he took his own life.
Yes.
And
Okay.
every time I photographed him, we had this like weirded, stilted dialogue. The first time I photographed him, he came in the studio. I was eating a pack of Ritz crackers. I hadn't eaten all day. I was starving. And I kind of didn't realize that they were coming in behind me. And I turned around with my pack of Ritz crackers. I said, "Oh, Mr. Bourdain, so nice to meet you. You want a Ritz cracker?" He just looked at me. He's like, "Who is this joker?" But I think that the second time I photographed him, I like Mark's all right. He's going to be quick. He's not going to mess with me. And I think second time I said, let's see that Mr. Bourdain smile. So I don't smile, Mark. All right, Mr. B. And then the third time, whatever. And then this time I said, you know what? I'm not stopping taking pictures till you smile for me. So I'm not going to smile, Mark. And I don't know what ridiculous dog and pony show I did, or like I don't know what I did at that point, and I just got this smirk, and all right, we are done, Mr. B.
Absolutely.
Um, and it's very, very, it's, it's emotional. You photograph somebody that's not there anymore. And,
Yeah.
now looking back on it, there's such a sadness in his face that,
Hmm.
I just thought was him, but it wasn't. It was just going through it. But I love
Hmm.
that portrait. I really
Yeah.
do.
Yeah, it's like a little smirk there, right? It's smile, but it's still
It's
a
not,
lot of holding
it's
back.
not a smile. It's not, if he was here to argue with me, I'd say it was a smile, but I know he would say it's not a smile. That's not me smiling.
Okay, I think we will squeeze one more. Let's go to this one.
Yeah, she's cool. Once again, just a very tight situation.
Hmm.
Trying to think of the lighting. Yeah, I think they wanted something on white with like a shadow close, which was kind of a trend at the time, and I don't really do trends very well, so I wanted to do that for them. And I was getting pretty pictures, but I wasn't getting this kind of interaction picture. She's very guarded. Not in a bad way. She was incredibly pleasant and lovely. And once again, it was just like Mark talking rubbish. I think I was doing Scottish accents for her or something. And at some point, I said something, and that was like, "Are you crazy?" Bang, you know,
You've done it.
Jack Black. There he
Perfect.
is.
Can we chat for 1 minute about this portrait?
That was all him.
Yes.
Listen, we got to be honest. There's a lot happens in post sometimes. This probably wasn't very well shot. Probably wasn't very well exposed. But he, he had a sweater on that. I said, "Why don't you try and do a Hemingway face?"
Hmm.
And that was his Hemingway. I was thinking like Karsh's pictures of Hemingway, and he did that. I was like, snap. Okay,
Done it. But
and
it
then
seems like
yeah.
it's one of those photos where you said, you might kind of pick this apart, but I think it's really
Oh,
eye-catching.
I could go crazy about picking this apart, but
Yeah.
I'm looking at it now and thinking maybe I have to retouch it. I don't know, but no, you're right. It's you kind of like yeah, you evolve and you have some new styles and new ways of working. But I certainly think that I think the I think I God, I think that other people think they're more relevant than I do. I
Mhm.
mean, I'm like, it's like being an Uber driver. You finished, yeah, you got a fare to JFK. You did it. You dropped them off. You clicked the meter. It's gone. You have the story, the experience, but what you're doing is you're like, where's my next fare? What's
Yeah.
next?
What's
What's
next?
happening now? What am I doing today?
Hmm.
So, I think when you lose that, then I don't know what I'll do. I'll probably be an Uber driver.
Hmm.
My wife has suggested it before.
So my last question is we're running a little bit over time, but my
Yes,
last
sir.
question to you is what would be the advice to photographers who are starting off? Like, they want to get into this portrait slash headshot photography industry. What would you say to them?
You
Having
know,
been
I've got.
brain.
I used to get really stumped by this question, but I'm not stumped by it anymore. I have a definitive answer.
Yes.
Practice.
Okay.
Practice your craft, man.
That's
If,
all what
if,
it is.
if you're not taking photos, then don't rely on the picture you took 2 weeks ago because it was pretty good. Well, what have you learned from that, and what are you going to do differently in your next picture?
So
Um,
look forward all the time.
and the only reason I say that is like you say like young and beginning photographers.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know about my peers, but I certainly do that. I look at it, go, God, if only I'd had another flag up on that, or what can I learn from that? Or that person didn't find me funny. Should I have gone in with a quieter approach?
Hmm.
And every time you practice, you build up the tools in your arsenal. I mean, you might learn something about light that day. You might learn something about f-stop. You might learn that 35 millimeter camera shooting underneath on a woman of a certain age doesn't work, you
Hmm.
know. But
Absolutely.
I did a shoot like a couple of weeks ago, and I looked back and I thought, wow, I really messed that
Hmm. Yeah.
up.
Well, I think we all have those, right? But
I think if you don't, you're delusional
yeah.
or a sociopath. I don't know. Just I
But don't
can't.
you think photography, especially portrait photography, is some kind of like a addiction that like you shoot, you want to do more, you want to do more, you want to do
Look,
more. It's
you
like never ending
start
story.
you start to collect faces.
Yes.
You know, what do you collect? Oh, I collect faces.
Hmm.
And I expect I collect interactions
Hmm.
between me and another human. That's what I collect. Listen, I got to mention it because if I don't, it's detrimental to me. But if anyone's interested and want to hear more about what I'm saying, I have a YouTube channel. It's
Yes.
called Complicated Things.
Hmm.
It's funny. It's uh, shows you a lot of stuff that probably other people don't
Yes.
show you. The
I
realities.
will link all those stuff.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely. Perfect. Okay, so let's wrap this up. Mark, thank you so much for this insightful,
Thank you,
podcast.
Russell. Thank you for having me, man. It's always humbling. It really is. If you
Yeah,
knew the rest, if you knew the rest of my day today, it's the best part.
thank you. Yeah, you know what? And then you also made my day because I had like
Thank you.
sending those invitation to people and everyone was saying no. And then you said, let's do it. And I'm like, I can't believe this. Like, it
Ah,
was
come on. It's like I don't like saying no. Listen, there's so many people that have helped me on my journey.
yes.
If there's anything that I can give back, I don't have any money to give back, but if there's anything experience that is going to help people take
No,
better
that's
photos,
priceless. The knowledge and the experience and everything which you're sharing. I don't think you can really put price on this because this is something that you learn from people who achieved something, and then it help you to don't make those mistakes sometimes, right? So
I think so.
absolutely. Okay, perfect. So thank you so much, and we
Thanks,
will.
Rafael.
Thank you.